In this video, I'm going to be sharing with you some of the key lessons that I learned that really enabled me to go from being in recovery to being fully recovered. For a long time, I didn't actually believe that full recovery was possible. I assumed that I would have to manage my eating disorder for the rest of my life. I thought that I would have this kind of complicated relationship with food and my body and eating for forever, and that I would just have to kind of manage it or get used to it or try and keep those thoughts and behaviors at bay. But actually that wasn't true, and I'm sitting here, right now, and I don't have an eating disorder anymore. And I really didn't think that was ever going to be possible. And that's why we shout from the rooftops that full recovery is possible, because it's true. And I think it's so important that we all know that, so that we have that hope, and that we have that message in the back of our minds, just to know that is absolutely possible for everyone. So for me, when I was recovering, I got to this point where I was at a kind of healthy weight, and that the eating disorder voice wasn't necessarily at the front of my mind all the time. I still had a lot of the behaviors and habits that came with the eating disorder, and so I was still very much managing it. I was kind of avoiding triggers, and I was still feeling like I had to do things in a certain way and avoiding certain things. But then it got to a point, a real turning point, where I realized I didn't have to believe and act on every thought that came into my head. And for those of you who are watching who have been following us for a while or have listened to our videos before, you will have heard us say that that many times before, because it is the thing that really turned things around for me. For so many years, I felt like I was being ruled by these thoughts in my head, by this kind of eating disorder voice that would tell me what to do, or tell me what I couldn't do, or telling me how I should do things. And I was really afraid of that. I was really afraid of those thoughts, and I was afraid of the feelings that went with them. So when it got to this point and I had this realization that actually I didn't have to believe and act on that anymore, things really started to change and shift, because I was no longer kind of having to obey these thoughts, and because it felt like they had so much power over me for such a long time. It felt really weird at first. It felt like I shouldn't be allowed to actually say no to that eating disorder, or to actually decide that actually no, I don't want to live my life by these really strict rules anymore. I want something different. I want to follow my own gut instincts. I want to do what I want to do, not what these thoughts were telling me to. So from that point, so many of the rules and habits and beliefs that I had really started to unravel in a good way. It was like I was kind of tugging at this string almost, and then it was just starting to see them fall away and actually lose so much of their power. Because when we've believed something for a really long time, it looks true, and so often we don't even realize that it's there, or that we're believing it. It just kind of becomes a part of our everyday life. So a big part of this sort of unraveling process was actually just starting to become aware of what my rules and beliefs and habits were. It was like flicking on a light switch, because if we don't know what they are, if we can't see them, then it makes it really difficult to then decide what to do about them. It's like we don't know what we don't know. So it was like this kind of discovery phase where I would just keep a really open mind, and if I started to notice myself doing something on autopilot, then it was a case of catching myself and just really gently questioning that and asking, oh, does this actually serve me anymore? Is this what I actually want to do? Or am I doing it because it's familiar and it's what I've done for a long time? And so it was, and I stress the word gently, because it can sometimes feel a bit overwhelming when we start to look at things in a different way and start to question some of the things that we've believed for a long time. So I think the kind of self-care in that is really, really important, and just being so gentle with ourselves and understanding and compassionate, and really, really looking out for ourselves through the whole of recovery, through the whole of our lives. It's so important. So for me, that was just such a big part of it, starting to become aware of these rules and thoughts and beliefs, and then starting to actually ask and explore whether or not I wanted to keep doing that. So that was the first big one. And then the second one, I mean, there are lots. And we share some of these on our blogs, on our YouTube channel, in our book. But the other really big one for me was knowing that I didn't have to distract myself or numb the uncomfortable feelings that I was feeling, and that actually we can feel everything and be okay. One of my favourite quotes from Glennon Doyle is that life isn't about feeling happy, it's about feeling everything. And I didn't know that for a really, really long time. I was constantly feeling guilty for not feeling kind of positive emotions. I would really judge myself for feeling anything, whether it was kind of sadness or feeling upset or worried or anxious or angry. Any of those feelings that we so often categorize as negative, I really struggled with. And so starting to realize that actually we don't need to do anything about those feelings. We can allow them to move through us all by themselves. And actually when we do that, we allow them to pass so much more quickly and easily. It's like I found that even now, if I'm feeling anxious, for example, as soon as I start resisting those feelings, as soon as I start judging them and doing anything I can to try and make that feeling go away, it creates so much more pain. It's like this kind of friction almost, and that can feel really uncomfortable. And that's kind of where this kind of extra layer of suffering comes from, and that's what I've found from my personal experience. Whereas actually, if I almost lean into that feeling, whatever it might be, then actually it's kind of almost giving it permission to leave when it's ready to. and that we can sit with that feeling and be okay. We can express it in a way that feels right to us, and like I say, allow it to move through us. And that was so new because I really thought that these sort of negative feelings had to be fixed, or that our whole purpose was to get rid of them as quickly as possible. So it's so easy in those moments when we believe that to turn to other things to distract ourselves or to provide some kind of relief. And the eating disorder can be a way of, or certainly was for me, a kind of an unhelpful way of doing that. And it can take, these kind of coping strategies can take so many different forms. It could be scrolling through social media for hours, or it could be drinking, it could be gambling, it could be online shopping, it could be like it can take so many different forms. But actually, so many of those things actually aren't so helpful. And what I realized throughout my recovery, and what I still realize now, is that it's like the fear of the feeling was so much worse than actually allowing myself to feel it, if that makes sense. It was like the anticipation of it, or the feeling that I wouldn't be able to cope if I allowed myself to feel those feelings and emotions. Whereas we can, and we do. We move through, and we've coped with every feeling that has come our way so far in our lives. So we have that inbuilt resilience. So yeah, I've really found that it was that fear and that anticipation that was, and the belief that I couldn't cope, that was so much bigger and scarier than actually almost kind of relaxing into those feelings. That might sound really strange, but it's like dropping the judgment and allowing it to be, and allowing it to do its thing and pass when it's ready to. So those for me were the two really, really big things that turned things around in my recovery. And like I said, we've got tons more videos on our YouTube channel and on our website, if you want to have a look at more. But I hope that's been helpful for some of you who may be struggling in your recovery right now. And I just want to reiterate that message, that full recovery is absolutely possible. So look after yourselves, and we'll speak soon.